Hi, I'm David with EV World News. We're talking about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. And I'm here today with our founder and chief editor, Bill Moore. How's it going today, Bill?
I'm here, I'm alive, and I'm cooking or something.
Good.
Anyway, I'm here.
You're here. Right, okay. That's a positive, anyways. All right. So let's talk about this first article. How much can you save every month charging an EV versus paying for gas? This is something, I think we've discussed occasionally,
Right.
you know, and you and I know that it just seems like, as a generality, electricity is about a third the price of gas, just kind of in
Well,
general.
well, well. Let me clarify something. That is true. Oh, Gesundheit.
Thank you.
Okay, that isn't exactly true because there is in a gallon of gasoline there's 33.6 kilowatt hours of electricity.
Okay.
Okay. So you take that and multiply that by the price of a gallon of gasoline, which right now is hovering a little above or below, depending, $3, right?
Yeah.
So you do the math, and actually, a gallon of electricity is more than a gallon of gasoline. Okay.
Okay.
But the difference is the cost per mile. Because when you sit down and figure out the cost per mile, it's significantly cheaper. In fact, the CNET did the math on this, not from the perspective I just did, how much is a gallon of electricity, if that were possible. But they did it from the point of view, what's the average price of a gallon of gasoline, the average price of electricity, and how much does it take to charge your car for a month, assuming the car drives, I think it's 1,250 miles, as opposed to filling it with gasoline and driving the same 1,250 miles. And it comes out to be half. I think they came up with like $150 to $4 a month if you're using gasoline, and $74, something like that, if you're using electricity, at 17 cents a kilowatt hour, which apparently is the national average. So yeah, it's cheaper. But if you're just looking at a gallon of electricity, it's not. It's more expensive. But it's how much more efficient that use of that energy is. Miles ahead of, literally, miles ahead of what you get out of a 25 mile per gallon car. Now, it changes, of course, if you're looking at a hybrid that gets 35, 36, 40 miles per gallon. That's another, it changes, but it still can't beat an electric car that typically will get somewhere in an area. I mean, mine have gotten, my little Fiat 500, I've gotten 160 miles per gallon equivalent. How are you going to beat that?
If you look at that, if you've got 33.6 kilowatts of electricity equivalent in a
Right.
gallon of gas, you should be able to drive an EV, or that car, if it was going as far as like a Tesla Model 3, that's, say, at 3.5 miles per kilowatt, should be able to go 120 miles per gallon.
Right.
Why
Exactly.
isn't it? Why
Yep.
isn't it? It's just terribly inefficient, right?
Yep. Yep.
You got 75% of that doing nothing. Just
Exactly.
getting burned off.
My whole point, exactly, for years now. You
Yeah.
take a dollar bill, rip it into three-quarters, rip it into 25 cents worth of it. Keep that. That's what you're actually moving you down the road. The rest of it you're just throwing off as pollution, heat, and brake wear.
Yeah. Somebody was saying in the article that they were spending $330 a month on gas. They switched to an EV and they spend $70 more on their electric.
Yeah.
And that seems about right. Now, the big question is if you're doing a whole lot of supercharging, you're probably spending more, because supercharging is pretty much the same price as gas.
All over the map in terms.
Now, that's in the U.S. In the U.S., it's about the same as gas.
Well,
but if you go to the U.K., supercharging is even more expensive than gas, and their gas is more expensive. Everything's more expensive over there. The big difference is their EV charging companies are really trying hard to make a profit. Okay.
Which is a good thing,
Yeah, which is understandable, right?
Yeah.
In the past year, remember previously on the show, I've said that the EV charging stocks, none of them are making any money. Well, that's changed.
Yeah.
So now a lot of them are. I've gotten to a point now where they're above break even on on charging because they're getting enough. There's enough people out there now using the chargers.
Yeah. Yeah, the utilization. If you really want to dig deep into this, read that CNET article, because I just touched the surface of it. There's a lot of depth in that article that goes into their math and how they arrived at it, and what's the difference between charging at home as opposed to, as we were talking about, supercharging, all of that. So they go into quite a bit of depth in that article if you really want to, go down the rabbit hole and explore this. Me, I'm just comfortable to go out in my thing and plug my car in and pay 12 cents a kilowatt hour.
Yeah. So yeah, this article they're saying if you were driving 1,250 miles per month, which that's more than the average
Probably.
EV owner drives by a lot. Okay,
Probably.
but they, the same thing. Whether it was 1,250, which we're talking 15,000 miles a year. They were saying 316 per gallon, 25 mpg. Average number of gallons of fuel required 50 gallons per month to drive that far. 3 miles, and they were using 3 miles per kilowatt hour, not 3.5,
Right.
like the
And by
Model
the
3 or
way,
the Model Y.
I'm getting well over 4 now on my Bolt.
Yeah, well, your car is nice and light, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those super heavy EVs that's just spitting off all the tires. That article from a long time ago about how all the tires were shooting particulates in the state. I saw somebody brought that up again on LinkedIn today.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? You
Well,
really believe that?
there's a one that I commented on. The lady brought up the fact that these electric cars are, they're heavier, and so they're shedding more brake pad material into the environment. And
Right, same thing.
and my comment is, I don't use my brake anymore. I have a car where I can drive it with one pedal, and all I got to do is let off the accelerator, and I let the electric motor regen function, slow the car and stop the car. I will drive today to go buy groceries at the other side of town, and I probably will not touch the brake once. I just let the regen and the one pedal braking do all the work for me. So I'm not putting any brake material, into the atmosphere.
Right. No, it is kind of just a weird argument. It's like, where do people keep getting this stuff?
Yeah.
But anyways, they were saying you'd use 416 kilowatt hours to drive 1,250 miles. Now they were using average cost of electricity 17 cents. Now obviously we
Right.
live in Nebraska where it's 12 cents, but
Right.
17 is a little bit more fair. I mean, California is more than Hawaii's like 36 cents.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there's some states where it's much more expensive, but average energy cost per mile for the EV was 5.7 cents, and the average for gas was 12.6 cents. And cost by comparison for the month, $70.72 for the EV, 158 for the gas car. So that was only a little more than double.
Yeah.
Only a little more than double. But here though, if you were using if you were driving a Model 3 or a Model Y and you have that lower cost of electricity, oh God, you would have shaved that number down to about $45 versus 158. And there you're almost talking, 3.5 to 1.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean that's a big difference. Of course, you could shave down that price of gas as well too. But you look here, the average gas car here probably isn't getting 25 miles per gallon because the cars are so big.
Yeah.
Right. So that's
I
another
doubt.
argument.
What do you get in an F-150 or a Dodge Ram, or a Ram?
About 15.
15. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean,
And
yeah.
that's
So
what everybody around here drives. Not everybody.
yeah, you'd add another full hundred. Well, you'd add about another $100.
Yeah.
On that, and but at the same time, you drop that. If you were driving an F-150 Lightning, you're probably only getting 2 miles per kilowatt, maybe 2.5 at best, probably 2. And so those numbers change. But it's interesting to see how that math works out. I mean, it's a pretty significant difference if you're, especially if you're somebody who drives a lot and you drive a heavy vehicle. If you're saving $200 a month, you know, but they were showing statistics where it was only saving about $100 a month. But anyways, okay, surprising article. Used EV prices fell 40% and buyers are searching like never before. I saw somebody on LinkedIn posting that they just bought a 22 Model X for like $38,000 with only 22,000 miles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, didn't have much
That
in the
was
way of
old, what?
miles.
110,000, something like that
It was
originally?
probably 90 when it was
90.
bought. Yeah, I mean they've come down a lot. They're under $80,000 now.
Well,
You know.
I'll give you a current example. As my wife and I were driving the other day, she reached into the glove compartment and pulled out the original Moroni sticker on our Chevrolet Bolt, and it lists the MSRP on there is double what we paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
Car's only 3 years old, 2022.
Right. But you know, somebody took that original $7,500 tax credit.
Exactly. Yep.
You know, and so when you see that MSRP, let's say that MSRP was $38,000. It
That was
really was
36.
36. We see,
36.
you know, after the 7,500, then it really was only what, 29?
Right.
You know, and then you know, you got it at a certain price. Were you able to work out your rebate?
I am still waiting on hearing from the dealer. Technically, I don't have a need for the rebate because I don't owe any taxes this year.
Oh, yeah, but that's not the way it's supposed to work.
I know. I know. Yep.
Yeah, that one's tough for people to understand because
Right.
it used to be that way and it's changed
Yeah. Yeah.
as to how it works now. But this article is used EV prices fell 40% and more buyers are searching. And this is some stats coming from CarMax. So over the past 3 years, searches for EVs have more than doubled.
Yeah.
Okay. More car buyers are hunting for used EVs over 3 years. I don't that's an interesting stat. CarMax saw EV searches surge in March of 22, and again in June of 24.
Yeah.
The first spike lined up with the gas price shock after Russia invaded Ukraine,
Right.
and the second came right as the Biden administration rolled out its $4,000 federal tax credit for used EVs. Online used car marketplace spring 25 electric vehicle consumer report shows just how far used EV prices have tumbled, down over 40% from January of 22 to February of 25. By comparison, prices for gas cars, hybrids, and plug-in hybrids only slipped about 12% over the same period. But you know, there's, you know, when you got the 800-pound gorilla that is Tesla dominating the US EV space, where you know, in that time span, probably 60% of all of those EVs were Teslas, and Tesla keeps driving down the retail price of a brand new car.
Right.
That's going to really squish that. Plus, you still had all those supply chain issues in 22, and that's one of the reasons why the prices for gas cars have come down 12% as well. And for the third year running, the Model 3 and the Model Y were number 1 and number 2 in used car sales. The Chevy Bolt is now in third. Volkswagen ID4 was the fourth most common one. It's like I've never even looked for an ID4. The Ioniq 5 is number 5. Well, how appropriate. The Nissan Leaf at 6. The F-150 Lightning at 7. I don't see what's number 8. Number 9 is a Ford Mach-E. Number 10 is the Rivian R1T.
Rivian, yeah.
Some mystery car is number 8. The article didn't give it in a list. They just gave it like in a paragraph and kept jumping back and forth.
Yeah.
Now here's some interesting stats. So for the first time ever, people who were getting rid of sedans and coupes, so not SUVs, are are buying EVs instead of buying SUVs. So more people are moving from cars to EVs than are moving from cars to SUVs.
Right.
So that's an interesting change.
Yeah.
When customers traded in sedans for EVs, the most common EV they purchased were the Model 3, Model Y, or the Chevy Bolt EUV.
Yeah.
The EUV has been real popular.
Right.
The,
Yeah, it's
the most
a little bit bigger car, a few more little gizmos on it.
Here's something interesting. So the most traded in model EV was a Model 3. And what did they trade that in for?
I'm guessing probably a Y.
That's it. So they all the Model 3 people were trading them in for a Model Y used. The rest of the top 5 were the Honda Civic and Accord, the Nissan Leaf, and the Toyota Prius. The F-150, which had been the top trade-in alongside the Accord in 2024, dropped off the list. Where used EVs are the most popular. This is kind of interesting. In 2025, Oregon is number 1. California was number 2. But California had been the previous winner for the previous couple of years. But California and Washington were 2nd and 3rd.
Yeah.
Nevada and Arizona were 4th and 6th. Utah and New Mexico, new to the list, held spots 5 and 7. This is more of it just jumping around the list. On the East Coast, New York appeared on the list for the 2nd time. It was number 10, had previously been number 8. Minnesota is jumped up 24 spots in a year to number 8, and New Jersey moved up to number 9. That's interesting kind of to see. It would have been nice if they had given some examples of specific vehicles that had traded in from X dollars to X dollars.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just assuming that it's mostly Model 3s, right? Because the Model 3 in 2022 as a used car probably was pretty expensive. They were probably still, a used one was probably still $45,000 because those Model 3s were 60 grand when they first came out, weren't they?
Right. Yeah.
And now you can get them for 30, the lower end ones for like 35. And if Tesla releases a new Model 2 for 25, the vehicle prices will continue to drop and used EV prices will drop dramatically while EV adoption will begin an unstoppable rise.
Yeah,
there's no question.
Yeah, I am a little confused because I keep seeing so many conflicting news reports on will they or won't they build a Model 2?
They're saying they're going to release it like in July.
Yeah, I don't believe it.
People are starting to think they're going to take the same chassis as either the 3 or the Y, and they're going to build something and bring it to market on the same chassis. Because there's not really, other than the robo-taxi, there's not really anything else that's out there in the space. And they've been retooling some lines. And that's where I think some people are wondering if that's where it's going to come from. Like maybe they're going to do something different with the Model 3, cut the battery in half.
Why? I guess I have to ask why in the conference call this week was that not clarified? Because it wasn't clarified.
No, it wasn't at all.
No,
I think they want it.
Are they going to do it? Aren't they going to do it? I don't know. I mean, it's a little hard to tell what. I'd say things are a little confused at Tesla right now. And
I'm wondering, could you take one of those cars, and if you cut the battery in half, okay, could with the reduced weight, could it then be like
not with a hacksaw, but
no, not with a hacksaw, but you know what I mean? Yeah, put in half as many cells. Could you make one of those a 200-mile car or a 180-mile car? That's what I'm kind of thinking. Like maybe they come out with. It's kind of like we were discussing that new truck, the Scout, that's supposed to be unveiled. Isn't it today? I think the Scout's supposed to be unveiled today.
I didn't see that. I didn't see that today.
Yeah, that's the Jeff Bezos backed. Jeff put it 1.2 billion into this company.
No, you're confusing them. Jeff Bezos's company is the Slate It looks a lot
Slate,
like a
my bad,
Scout.
not the Scout.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
bad, not Scout. Slate.
It looks a lot like a Scout.
It
Looks a
does.
lot like a Bronco, right?
But it's a
But it's
two-door, right? It's a
it's a two
two-door
door,
truck from the
right?
pictures we've seen. And they're supposed to announce that today. But you start doing a two-person automobile, um, and you cut that size down, you cut down the weight of the battery and a lot of other things, and then you give it a 100-mile range. It shouldn't be that hard at today's
Yeah.
battery prices to
I
bring some of these things down to that price.
I would not advise going with a two-person car. At best, make it a two plus two car, like my Fiat, if you're going to do that, because you're going to want to occasionally have somebody in that back seat, even if it's a rare occasion. But I've driven the Honda Insight, the original one with two seats. Okay, it's okay if you got you and a friend, or you and your wife going somewhere. But it's I've found that having the two plus seating arrangement that's in my Fiat is a much more compelling. There's only generally me and her in the car, but there have been occasions where I've needed to carry people, and I couldn't do it if it's a two-seater, like the Cyber Cab. I think they ought to, have the seats move forward, or have one of those little coach, side coach doors or something to get in the back seat.
But it's another one of those things. It's like, what if I'm towing uphill? You know, what if I'm driving in the Arctic? All these things where people want to bash EVs, when in reality, you and I both know most of the time you drive around by the normal person, that's not retired, is mostly just going to drive back and forth to work, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just one person in the vehicle. So a lot of these make sense to have a $25,000 new EV rather than, and think about that. If it has a small battery, how long is it going to take to supercharge? Not very long, right?
Not very long.
So it'd
Yeah.
be a pretty short stop.
And
But
chances are that'll be the family's, commuter car, and it's going to sit either at work where you might be able to get a charge, or it'll obviously sit for like 8 to 12 hours at home, unless of course you live in an apartment complex or something, and then it's another issue. But in that case, you want a smaller battery, because it's not going to cost you as much and take you as long, at a public charging station.
yeah, I mean, I could totally see them releasing one with like 150-mile range, and then for another $10,000, you get one with a 300-mile range.
Right.
That wouldn't surprise me in the slightest to see them do something like that, just to show how cheaply. So I remember seeing a while back, this was a couple of quarters ago, Tesla's average cost to produce their vehicles was 30 grand. And that was kind of across the whole spectrum. But,
Okay.
I'm assuming that the Model 3 was less than that. The Model Y was probably less than that. But the other vehicles, the Cybertruck, the X, and the S, probably cost more, right? But because so much of that cost has been the battery tech. And, as that keeps changing, you put in a slightly smaller battery. But now putting in a slightly smaller battery isn't a huge savings, because the batteries aren't costing what they used to cost. And so, I think
Well, we will find out at some point if it's coming up here, in next sometime this summer. I guess we'll get an answer to it. But they have not. My point is, they haven't been very clear. I think they've been so focused on the PR disaster that Elon has created for them, that they, how do we move this thing? Now, fortunately, they're still selling a lot of cars, and we see more and more of them every day here in Omaha, which is a good thing. I'm glad, but I think we will have to wait and see when that $25,000 car actually hits the road. I hope it's sooner. Really, I really do. But boy, things are so apparent, confused. It seems to me there that well, they need to get some serious leadership back in charge of that company.
Yeah, we'll see what we get there. All right. So, um, I have an article on Sam Altman with OpenAI. He's stepping down as the chairman of SMR firm Oklo, OKLO. And Oklo is making they're basically making small nuclear reactors for data centers.
Okay.
And so apparently the idea is by him stepping down as chairman, it removes the conflict of interest, which I don't really understand why it's a conflict, but for them to sell to OpenAI. And they already have
sell the company or sell power.
Sell power.
Okay.
Sell power to OpenAI, and he's still I think he's still the largest shareholder. So I don't know why it would really, make a difference whether he was chairman or shareholder. But this way they can go, and they're doing 75 megawatt and larger reactors.
Okay.
That would do. Let me see, 15,000 to 30,000. That would probably do about 30,000 homes. But that would go in a data center instead.
Yeah.
It's like that's a lot of juice, right? We were talking about some of that, 5-minute charging, where some of these chargers are using 1.2 megawatt chargers. And they're just like, oh, wow, that would power 400 homes. You just see the whole neighbor behind the charging station. Their lights are flickering while you're charging for 5 minutes.
Power sags. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you say, I came across a story. Have you heard of deep fission?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're planning on taking and building these small nuclear reactors. Apparently, from the way they describe it, it's the size of a trash can, but as tall as a house. And they're going to put it down a borehole 1 mile deep.
Mm-hmm.
Presumably to get it below water tables and things like that. So there's movement happening in that area.
Yeah. So basically, to get a megawatt, wait, me see. Every square meter of reactor size will yield about 2 megawatts.
Okay.
I've gotten really good at hot temperature gas reactor technology. I'm not really an expert, but I know more than like 99.9% of people.
Okay.
I had an hour-long chat with a lead scientist for an SMR company yesterday, and it's like I realize I don't know much,
Yeah.
but I'd like to know more.
And that's a positive sign. To admit that you don't know as much as you need to, that's a really good sign, right?
Yeah, no, I know when I'm talking about something when I don't know what I don't know. It's like, hey, I got to ask somebody who really knows the answers, right?
Yeah.
But now I'm doing some work in that space.
I should point out, nothing affiliated with EV World directly. Dave's got his own little ventures he's running off to the side. So
so EV World doesn't pay the bills.
EV World does not pay the bills. He's like me. He does it just for the sheer joy of spreading the good news.
We're bringing joy to the masses. Bring joy to the masses with the latest in EV news.
I'm Peter. He's Paul.
There you go. Oh man. But now this is something kind of interesting. The article went on to say that Oklo aims to develop its first small reactor by 2027. One of the things I've learned, so how many nuclear power plants have opened up in the United States in the last 30 years?
Maybe 3 or 4. One.
There's one down in Georgia.
One in Georgia.
There just hasn't been any.
That has had all kinds of problems too, getting that thing built.
So there's a lot that goes into obviously making a nuclear reactor, but one of the big things you need enriched uranium.
Yep.
Well, would you believe that with nobody buying reactors, there's been no need for anybody to enrich uranium in the United States? We don't even do it now. A new place was just opened at like a deal was signed recently in Tennessee to make enriched uranium at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory.
The old place, huh?
Yeah, where atomic energy first started, right?
Yep.
Where we built the atom bombs.
Yeah, that in Hanford.
That's where the Manhattan Project took place.
Yeah.
But anyways, so there's a company that's going to start enriching uranium there, but there's a huge interest now in these SMR reactors. There's expected to be by 2050, probably a couple thousand of them worldwide. and a lot of it is to support um,
Well, you know,
hard to reach locations
right.
and um,
Data centers and
data
crypto
centers. Data
miners.
centers are the biggie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so much of this Oklo firm, and that what's interesting is somebody else on the board of this is our current the current Secretary of Energy is also on Oklo's board.
Mm. Okay.
So, but they've already got agreements to supply like 14 gigawatts of capacity, and at 75 megawatts a reactor, that's
That's a
that's a
lot of
lot of reactors.
that's a lot of reactors. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot of holes in the ground.
Yeah, that's almost 200 reactors. That's a big deal. Um, but anyways, yeah, there's so many places that want to sign deals with these because it's an interesting space. That's for certain. Um, but we'll end up talking more about this subject on this
As
show
time goes
because
on.
I'm spending a
Well,
lot of time reviewing it now.
it's energy, and it's clean energy in the sense that it's not, generating a lot of carbon and other, contaminants into the atmosphere. So yeah,
Well,
there's a place for it.
so in the United States, there, and this is interesting, we're on fourth generation nuclear reactors. Okay. None exist in North America yet. Okay. None have been completed in North America. There is one operational in China, and there's one Gen 3 nuclear plant in the United States. All of the accidents that ever happened with nuclear all occurred on generation 1 and 2 reactors.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the big thing is each generation has a quantum leap in safety.
Yeah.
And these ones, even if the people died that ran the thing and there was nobody there to service it, it still can't melt down. And
Well,
so
let's
there,
hope that's not the case.
no, no, but I'm just saying
Yeah.
the technology has changed so much
Right.
that the system would become inert. And so there's a lot of things that have changed. Now, the one thing they still haven't really addressed is there's all these ways that people are storing the spent fuel rods.
Yeah.
There's still not a great solution for that yet.
No, there's
Although I
not.
have seen where some groups are getting their nuclear fuel from um, decommissioned nuclear weapons.
Right.
So,
So
so some of that is being repurposed.
from from the Russians, one of our chief sources
Well,
of uranium.
we were getting it from them.
Yeah, we were getting it. Of course, that's all kind of come to a stop, obviously.
Yeah, but anyways, yeah, it makes for a weird world. All right, I want to talk about Kia. So I thought this was kind of interesting because I hadn't even heard of a Kia EV3, and it's won the World Car of the Year, not just EV, just overall car of the year. And it looks like a Kia or Hyundai here, but it's the EV3. It was the World Car of the Year title. It recognizes, rewards, and inspires automotive excellence and innovation in the rapidly changing mobility industry. Winners were selected by a highly respected jury of 96 international automotive journalists from 30 nations. Well, that would be more than if we did an EV World thing, and maybe you, I, and Mike would pick the car, right?
Right, exactly.
Right, but 96 journalists were the judges. The award highlights Kia's global leadership and the provision of design-led, technologically advanced, sustainable mobility solutions. I mean, it's nice looking. I mean, I like the looks of Kias and Hyundais. I love the Santa Fe. I think the Santa Fe is really great. Now, they got rid of the stupid Santa Fe plug-in hybrid, which I don't know why they did that. It was one of the good
There
ones in
was
there because the only Santa Fe
there's
now is gas.
there's
But
economics involved, I'm sure.
yeah, but I mean, the Santa Fe and the EV9 pretty similar, but
Yeah.
they, in my opinion, the Santa Fe has better color schemes. They don't have some of those matte color schemes
Right.
yet for the EV9.
Now the EV9 is a 7-seater, right? And the Santa Fe
Yes,
was a 5.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But they're both fairly large SUVs. Now, previous awards that Kia has won, the EV9 was last year's World Car of the Year, and it was the electric vehicle of the year as well last year. In 2023, the EV6 GT was a performance car of the year. And before that, the Kia Telluride, which is a gas car, was the 2020 World Car of the Year. And the Kia Soul EV was the 2020 World Urban Car.
Okay.
And just saying that this isn't a award that's just given to EVs. It's just that seems to be what's winning currently. So while I don't know if the EV3 is coming to America, I would, suspect it probably would be. I think I saw somewhere where it's like a $35,000 range automobile, but apparently it's not being sold here. It makes for something strange. All right,
Well,
let's.
but when you consider the fact that, when we talked about this McKinsey report, and you find that 50% of the people in China say their next car will be an EV, and only 12% in America say their next car will be an EV. Where will you want to market that vehicle? You want to do it in
No,
China.
I get it.
Yeah.
I mean, yesterday, Mike and I were talking the 6 new electric vehicles that Buick is releasing as their Electra brand. So Buick has a sub-brand for EVs just in China. Now, we talked about this with GM. It's like resurrect Saturn as an EV only company. The problem is there's probably people out there that still own franchises of that. That's probably what's preventing them from doing that.
My neighbor, back just behind me here, has a Saturn. So yeah, there's
you still see some around on the road.
Yep.
I don't think they've made any since about 2009. I think it was about the last 8 or 9, and you still see them out running around. Of course, you'll occasionally see cars driving around from the 80s and 90s too, right? Not that often. Usually, if you do, though, it's a pickup truck.
Well, the interesting thing is the Buick Electra is an old, sub brand. I mean, my dad, I think at one time had like a 1956 Buick Electra. That brand name's been around for a long. Well, here's another example. Did you know Ford's bringing back the Falcon?
No.
Yes, Ford is bringing. Now, I wasn't quite sure. The article wasn't quite specific as to whether it'll be an EV, but I would suspect that there's probably a good chance that when we hear more about this, that the Ford Falcon will be an EV. But the Ford Falcon's coming back, so it makes sense. Buick Electra, make it electric, for crying out loud, Yep. And these are really good looking cars. They've got some great designers at their design studio over in China. They know what they're doing.
I'm really surprised at this point that at least in the US, you'd think that we'd see all the manufacturers pretty much shift away, even if they don't shift to EVs, that they'd shift to either hybrid or plug-in hybrid, and just ditch 100% ICE.
Right. Or the new one now is you're starting to see more references to extended range hybrids. Mazda, which one? Geely, for example, and others are starting to introduce what they call these extended range, which are basically electric cars with a small generator of some type, whether that is a small internal combustion engine or whether it's a rotary engine or in the BMW's case, the original extended range hybrid was a motorcycle engine.
You should be able to just make your own corn alcohol at home and just pour that in the gas tank, right? You should be able to take just about anything.
We could go down that rabbit hole because that's exactly what Henry Ford was proposing for the Model T.
Oh, really?
His original vision was to get this car into the hands of farmers because these guys were isolated, right? They were, miles and miles away from these little tiny towns. How did they get their produce into town? How did they get it to the silo and, along the railroad track? All that. So his proposal was, let's get them the Model T, and that original Model T apparently, and I'm just guessing here at the moment, I haven't verified it, but that Model T was designed to run on farmer-produced ethanol.
Yeah, I mean, everybody had a still, right?
Yep.
Doesn't everybody have a still at home making their own wood grain alcohol? I mean, who needs a gas station, right? You could just
or corn. Well,
fuel up
yeah,
at home
yeah.
on some booze.
There were no gas stations back, at that
Right.
point in time. Only in the
Yeah,
cities.
yeah, there was no gas station infrastructure. Yeah, I'm just saying, it's like, yeah, you just pour some alcohol in there, make some moonshine at home, and just pour it in there, and off you go.
What you don't drink, you put in the gas tank, or you
There you
put in
go.
the
And then people, if they're siphoning someone's gas, they wouldn't die from it.
right. You get a little
They just
high,
they might be sleeping on the side of the road.
yeah.
Yeah, but let's see. So, what other kind of numbers did we get from this EV transition article? What do we see? 50% of vehicles sold in China were EVs. 28% were battery electric. 15% plug-in hybrid.
Yep.
6 were the extended range electric vehicles. Oh, China's the only market where the extended range electric vehicles are available at scale.
Yep.
And it was 21% in Europe, 10% in the US, 8% battery electric, 2% plug-in hybrid. With uptake varying vastly by state and region in the US. Yeah,
Yes.
well,
Yes.
we're aware of this.
Yes.
Um, let's see. Let me see. China says 45% their next car will be battery electric.
Yep.
23% in Europe and 12% in the United States.
Yep.
Now, that being said, the average person probably isn't buying a car this year. So,
No. No.
but you know what I mean. So when they do these surveys, the average person may not be planning on buying a car for a few years, right? So it's going to be different than what people are actually buying when they go out there. So if it says 45% of people in China are planning to buy an EV next, but 50% are buying them now, then it's just a little bit of a
Well, what's that? Put those two numbers together. You got 95% of the population.
yeah, but it's not saying 45% of people
No.
that don't own one. It's just saying
Right.
45% of people say their
Right.
next car is going to be
Right.
one.
But that's a huge change from what it is here in this country. Huge change. So,
It's funny. So demand in Germany for EVs fell when they ended the subsidies at the end of 23, but they've picked back up. And Germany is the only European country in the serve where battery electric vehicle purchase intent at 30% outweighs plug-in hybrids at 18%. So, and most of the other European countries, most people want a plug-in hybrid rather than a full-on EV.
well, it makes
Which,
sense. They're not.
yeah, but here in the United States, you just don't have any availability of plug-in hybrids. Even if people wanted them, you just don't have many options.
No.
There's so few.
Yeah.
You do, at least in the full-size truck, you have the Dodge Ram one, but who knows how available those are?
Is that even out yet?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's out now.
I
Not
have
100%. If I saw one, I wouldn't know, right?
I
mean, just look at the Dodge
not
Ram.
I have not seen any articles reviewing it at this point. So that tells me if it is out there, it's not very widely available. Because normally, if it were, you'd have the media guys would be all over, and there'd be a dozen stories, on the news wire.
All right, so let's talk about this. US DC fast charging network surges past 55,000 ports, and it's getting more reliable. Now, by DC, that means level 3. Because I know in a lot of things we've seen numbers where there's over 100,000 charging stations, but a lot of those are just level 2.
Right.
And that's going to take a while. Okay, but 55,000 fast charging stations now in the US. What's interesting is the top states for reliability were Utah, Alaska, Tennessee, North Carolina, and Nevada.
Now, when you were reading the earlier list of cars that were being sold in the largest numbers by states, every one of the states that you mentioned were also the states that are in this article.
Because they have a lot of charging stations.
Because they have charging stations that are reliable. Yep.
Nice. let's see here. Utilization utilization um, dropped
Now,
slightly from 16.6% in quarter four to 16.2% in quarter one, following typical holiday travel
holiday
patterns.
travel. Yep.
So would that basically be 1/6 the time? So essentially 4 hours a day, all those chargers are actually getting used. That's
Yeah.
pretty significant. It's the early days of people transitioning to the Tesla NACS protocol. 59% of new ports are NACS. 104 non-Tesla and only 104 non-Tesla NACS ports were added this quarter at non-Tesla networks. So drivers of new non-Tesla vehicles need to use their adapters if they want to use
Yeah.
superchargers.
Yeah.
Charging operators. This is kind of interesting. Fixed pricing is used 80% of the time.
Yeah.
Time of use is used 16% of the time. Pay by time options are rare, used only 4.2% of the time. I would think that the time stuff would be more like level 2 than level 1, or than level 3. California charges average cost is 60 to 61 cents per kilowatt hour for supercharging. That's a bunch.
Yeah. That's a bunch.
Let's see. Well, the situation just keeps getting better and better, and it's a little bit easier to go across the country, that's for sure, than it used to be. Okay, I got a funny one. So, passengers alarmed a self-driving car.
Yeah, just before you move on, I did the math on that. That 61 cents translates into $20.49 a gallon.
Well, yeah, but on the super inefficient.
Well, yeah, I know, but we're talking earlier
Right, I
about.
get that.
Okay.
All right. Passengers alarmed a self-driving cars kidnapped them, refused to let them
Yeah,
exit.
this is good.
Oh God. So a Waymo, which is a Jaguar. Let me
Right.
see where this occurred. I think, in Austin, Texas.
Okay.
Found herself stuck in the middle of an express loop when her self-driving Waymo decided it needed to take a break on the highway. After stopping, the vehicle seemed to offer no way for Navarro and her passengers to leave, effectively trapping the group on an active highway as cars whipped past. Um, the lady's last name is Navarro. She detailed her ride on TikTok. So the incident started when the Waymo went haywire, whisking the group off in the opposite direction they needed to go. Waymo riders can contact live support. The remote agent didn't do much, and by the sound of it, couldn't have even if he wanted to. Once customer service was called, Navarro says the car stopped in the middle of a lane under Mopac, which is an infamous toll loop running along the west side of Austin, Texas. It's frequently listed as among the most dangerous highways in the city, and is so notorious it spawned its own viral parody account on X known as Evil Mopac. So when we're talking to customer support, we keep saying, hey, we're on the highway, please move the car. Cars kept honking at us and it would not move, would not let us out. They were arguing with the live support agent as a screen prompts riders to please exit now, all while an autonomous voice vehicle approaching at each passenger car. So we don't have a way to physically move the cars. The agent stammers as the woman asked to leave. Oh God. So a Waymo spokesperson said that passengers have the ability to pause the ride and exit when desired. Passengers can exit the vehicle by pulling the handle twice, once to unlock and another to open the door. But I think what's happening is because they were on this fast highway, the car wasn't
Exactly.
letting them exit for their safety.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh God. So I'm trying to see if it actually says what finally. It never does give an information on what eventually happens.
No, it doesn't.
That's kind of that's a frustrating article. It's like, damn. It goes on to criticize the Trump administration in the article, though. It goes under the Trump administration, the already fractured regulatory landscape was poised to relax even further, meaning profit-seeking companies like Waymo, Uber, and Tesla will be given even more power to fill our streets with error-prone cars like the ones Navarro experienced in Austin. They had to throw that in there, make it political.
Well, yeah.
Oh, Lord. Anyways, well, Bill, we've been rambling on for about 50 minutes already.
50 minutes, that's quite enough. Thank you.
Yep. All right. Well, folks,
I hope everybody found it helpful, beneficial. Comment down below and tell us, don't tell us off, but tell us what you think, suggestions, how you'd like to see us improve what we're doing, please.
Remember to tell us we clearly don't know what we're talking about. I love those ones. All right.
Yes.
Anyways, all right, everybody, have a great day, and we'll be back next week.